Hi everyone, this is Tanishka. I hope you can hear me okay. I just was, I've, literally had a 10-hour sleep, and I got woken up in the middle of the night with, downloads, and they've been pretty persistent that I share the insights that came through. So that's what this video is about. Specifically, I'm going to be speaking about what it is to be a shaman. Hi Sharon, thanks for joining me live. Because I've just finished running my Inner Goddess retreat, and every time I lead women through that descent process to face their shadow, so the aspects of themselves that they don't fully consciously comprehend, and how they're making self-sabotaging choices and enacting old dramas through not consciously understanding and embodying the different archetypes or psychological aspects that make up our psyche, our soul. And I've facilitated women through this process for 21 years, and every time it puts me through it as well. I don't get to stand on the outside looking in. It always puts me through the process. And that is the power of working with, hi Danny, hi Jen, it's so lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me live. So I'm just speaking about what it is to walk the shaman's path, what it is to be a shaman, because people are hungry, particularly in the West, for initiation, and they may not even have a language for that. But what I observe is that most people are seeking that through plant medicine and medicines. Psychotropic plants are very, very powerful shamanic tools, and traditionally they were always used in conjunction with mystic guidance, and that is the initiation into the mythic realm by somebody skilled in sacred women's mysteries, somebody who understood the landscape within of the mythic stories that we enact and play out, and the archetypal lessons that we encounter as a soul. So without an understanding, without a map, okay, and a guide of the inner landscape, what's happening more and more, and I'm hearing absolute horror stories of people ending up in psychosis for years, after doing plant medicine journeys, or people experiencing entity attack, because there are so many people being trained up now to lead plant medicine ceremonies, and I'm not aware of even one practitioner that is utilizing the mythic landscape of ancient women's mysteries, so that people can consciously integrate the experience that they're having between the worlds. And so, when I spoke the myth of Ishtar on the last day of my retreat just a few days ago, as a teacher, you become the student, because as you are channeling the teachings, every time they come through a little bit differently, and you get more insights, more upgrades, more transmissions yourself. And so I also learn through this process. And I found myself, when I was sharing the myth of Ishtar, which I'm happy to share with you now, getting some new insights. So the myth goes, and this is the story of the descent we all take when we come to Earth, when we incarnate, when we take on a body, and also when we journey between the worlds. And for women, this happens during our blood rites. So during menstruation, during labor, it happens when people are crossing through the gates of death consciously. So for men, because they haven't been receiving initiation, women are at least initiated through their bodies. But of course, if they're not consciously guided and midwifed to understand the mystic significance of those blood rites, they also are craving initiation, and hence we're seeing so many people seeking out plant medicine journeys as a form of initiation, which in itself is fine. But in the ancient world, as I said, you know, people were initiated through watching the ancient mystery plays, through watching the myths be enacted, through understanding via an introduction these different archetypes, and the medicines were a part of that, okay? People weren't doing medicines without that, okay? So the myth of Ishtar, also known as Inanna, forgive me, I'm quite tired, so I'm, you know, if I'm speaking the wrong words, but she is the aspect, the feminine archetype that governs the crown chakra or energy center. And so she comes to meet with her doppelganger, her evil twin, Ereshkigal, which is simply her disowned self, her shadow. And she comes when Ereshkigal is birthing, okay, which is significant. So a woman who is in labor, she descends down into the underworld. The underworld is the realm of the bottom three chakras, and most people are unconsciously operating out of their bottom three chakras, which is psychologically the knight or the maiden, okay, because we journey the first chakra 0 to 7 years of age, which is the base chakra, and brings up the archetypes of the inner wild man and the wild woman. This is why kids run around nudie-roody and eat sand and, you know, throw tantrums. They're completely wild and primal and free, which is great. And then age 7 to 14, we journey through the emotional body lessons, which is the archetypes of Aphrodite and Aries, which is love and war. And that's actually what we're journeying through right now, as we've just come through the equinox. For those in the southern hemisphere, that's been the spring equinox. For those in the northern hemisphere, that's the autumn equinox. But that always happens when we're working with the polarity of Libra and Aries, which is love and war, those lessons. And then at 14 years of age, we activate the solar plexus energy, which is the lower mental body, with the archetypes of Athena and Apollo. So this is very much finding our purpose in life, and people that don't find it during those years often end up very lost, okay, and doing a lot of drugs, because they don't know why they're here. They don't know how to make their contribution using their inner gifts. And without initiation then at 21, people don't naturally then move into the heart, into the inner archetypes of the inner mother and the inner father. And so what we have on the planet are people stuck in teenager, okay? So up until the age of 21, and they're unconsciously operating out of their lower three chakras, and psychologically they're stunted, emotionally, you know, mentally, as somebody who hasn't activated the inner mother and the inner father. And this is why in the ancient world, the Eleusinian mysteries were, you know, the mysteries of the mother, and these were something they'd even let prisoners out for once a year. It was considered so vital for the psychological growth of the people. And this was the biggest religion of the ancient world. It was not how it's been portrayed as something, you know, people having orgies, and, you know, this was a very civilized initiation cycle where people would watch the descent journey of the mother one night, watching the myth of Demeter, and understanding the process that we go through as both the parent and the child every autumn and spring, being put through, facing our shadow, betraying one another, having to let go of one who's outgrown their dependency on us. The next night they'd return and they'd watch the descent of the hero. The next night they'd return and watch the descent of the maiden. The next night they'd return and they'd watch the descent of the lovers, because we're all being put through this cyclic descent process to face our shadow every year with the seasons. And if we don't understand it, we run away from it. Yeah, so we see particularly a lot of men going to places where the sun always shines, never having to do the descent process of owning their shadow, which is why I'm so excited to be offering the Grail in 2019 for the men who are brave enough to face their shadow during the darkest night of winter, which is winter solstice. So in the myth of Ishtar, she descends down through the 7 gates, which represent the inner planetary spheres known as the inner chakras, the inner vortices, the stargates. These are the levels of consciousness, so that she enters the underworld completely stripped bare. Okay, she has to have an ego death in order to enter, like we all do, you know, naked as babies to this realm. But she has made a conscious decision to come to be there, if you will, during the rite of birth. And it's because women don't get enough shamanic preparation, mentoring and initiation prior to the blood rite of birth that there is so much postnatal depression as women struggle to integrate such a huge experience. It's like, it's the akin of going to war for a man, you know. So when she gets there, her sister hears that she's, you know, in this realm, and she orders her sister to be hung like a piece of rotting meat on a spike. And one could say this was a bit of, you know, sibling rivalry. But the point is, she does not escape, even though she is one who has ascended, one who has attained conscious recognition of herself as a divine being, as a goddess. In order to enter the underworld, she is still put through this humbling process. And she, you know, her best friend, Ninshaba, her faithful priestess friend, is there at the gates using her third eye sight to watch what's going on. And so she petitions the gods. She goes to them and says, help, you know, Ishtar is in the pits of hell. She's going to have a mortal death if we don't do something. And it's Enki, the trickster, the magician god, is the one who says, okay, I will do something. And so he fashions 2 beings called the Galatur out of clay, and because they don't have a soul as such, they're not put through that same process that Ishtar has been through, where she's been stripped of her 7 mays, the 7 pieces of divine regalia, the 7 veils, the jewelry that honor her royal status as one who has opened her 7 stargates. Here we see, you know, the yantra, which represents one who has opened the inner shaman's pipe, the rainbow bridge, so that they can be a clear vessel and embody the god or goddess in human form, and therefore be a conduit to anchor heaven on earth. And that is what we are all here to do at this time, okay? Everyone that's taken a ticket for this ride here on Gaia, particularly at this huge transition of the ages, has put their hand up to serve as a vessel, as a rainbow bridge, to assist as a spiritual midwife in that process. So these Galatur beings, what they do is they rush to the side of Ereshkigal, who is in the throes of birthing, yeah, and they empathize with her. They moan and they groan, and any woman who has given birth knows that to have someone who is truly with you, okay, on every single level of their being, that is there as a support through you allowing, you know, the energies of creation to ride you, okay, and that will bring up every fear. It will bring up every unexpressed emotion. You know, you will literally be broken open, so that you have to have a death, the death of the maiden, as it was known in the ancient world, so that the new identity of mother can be birthed. And at the end of this, Ereshkigal is so grateful to these 2 beings for truly being with her in her dark night of the soul, that she says, I will give you anything. Just name it. Name your price, like anything. And they said, we'll only accept one thing in return, and that is the freedom of Ishtar, that she is released from hell, as it was later known, based on the fact that the underworld is the place of the great rebirth, where we all must go if we are to transition from one state of being to another, that she be allowed to return to her rightful realm, to heaven. And so it is done. And up she goes. And when she gets there, she sees sitting on her throne her husband, Dumuzi, who's smoking his reed pipe. Yeah. And what was given to me as I was speaking the myth this year in the retreat just a few days ago was that, you know, he's lost in the pipe dreams of his shaman's pipe because, you know, it's very seductive, the devas, the plant devas. Just like we have been told not to eat and drink with the fairies, or you can be lost for 100 years and think it's a day. You know, when we enter to that space between the realms, as it was called once upon a time, the realm of the Fae, the realm of the elementals, the realm of the devas of Middle Earth, we can be blown apart with the multi-dimensional reality. You know, the experience is so amazing, far more amazing than what we experience just here in the realm of 3D, the place of physical form, that we can hunger for more, okay? And we can want more and more and more of that particular diva's spell, her enchantment. But what happens is we experience the law of diminishment, or the law of diminishing return, which is the more we have of a substance, whether that's chocolate cake, you know, whether it's marijuana, whether it's ayahuasca, you know, the more that we have, the less we open up our pineal gland and the subtle senses, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, precognition, intuition. You know, these plant medicines are simply to open the door. But if we, like Alice in Wonderland, you know, like the caterpillar sitting, you know, lost in the pipe, you know, eat me, drink me, it becomes about, I've got to get more because I want to experience more, and we don't know any other way to experience the multi-dimensionality of our soul without this substance. And so this is what we are seeing. We're seeing mass abuse of plant medicines, and because they're being partaken in a sacred context, in a ceremony, people don't see it as addiction, okay? But it makes people less and less available to the true sacred feminine, which is Mother Nature, which is here. You know, we have Grandmother Gaia at the center of the earth, the consciousness, and that's where we descend when we have plant medicines. But then on the surface of the earth, we have Mother Nature. And, you know, she, if we do the inner work to open up those 7 gates, those 7 chakras, we become the reed pipe, we become the shaman's pipe. So we don't need substances. You know, I had an experience this week where I was so grateful to be taken to this sacred portal here in Bali, where I was lucky enough to be taken 10 years ago, and I have searched for it in the 10 years since, but it wasn't time. And I knew it was time. I knew it was time for me to return to this particular waterfall. It's not open to the public. And I showed my driver and this, you know, what it was, and he said, yes, I can take you there, but he wasn't aware of this particular private one. He was only aware of the public one, and he took us there, myself and some sisters, and, you know, it was a circus. There were people, you know, just busloads of tourists and people selling souvenirs, and just loads of people on the path, and people walking back up wearing abseiling gear because they, you know, scaffolded the face of the waterfall. You know, it was about people taking photos and Instagramming themselves. It was not about communion with the elements. And I said to him, this is not the place that I went to, you know, and would you please ask one of the local guides about how I can find this place. And sure enough, the first guide that came over, he said, you were here a long time ago, weren't you? And I said, yes. And we got talking, he showed me an image, and I immediately recognized her. And so he agreed to take us there. And, you know, we walked for half an hour through this absolute magical cornucopia plantation of everything from cacao to starfruit to jackfruit to dragon fruit to, you know, I mean, God, the list of foods was just unbelievable. And then we get down to this beautiful banyan tree. And the banyan trees, they're often planted here in Bali with the temple, because it's the banyan tree that houses the gods, you know. And anyone that's been here to Ubud and gone through the promenade of banyan trees, you can't not feel the presence of the gods. So it is, you know, whilst they build man-made temples to house the gods, nothing man-made can house it. It has to be organic, including us. And so I went and I did the hongi with the spirit of this tree, and I wept as I climbed up into his branches. He was, you know, like the guardian of the mother and her portal. And then, you know, the sound of the water of this waterfall was getting louder and louder and louder. We, you know, walked over bamboo bridges, and finally we turned the corner and there she is. And I just, you know, cracked me open and I just wept. Took off my clothes and just had to get in. And the force of this water, I mean, it was coming out of this cavern in the rock that looked, you know, like a womb. It reminded me of Dosmery, can't remember the name of it, in Cornwall, where again the water comes out of this womb shape that goes into a grail cup, which was said to be where Excalibur was, you know, anointed for Arthur's grail, where I went on the Alchemy of Love tour in 2016. And so I went straight in. You can't get under this water. I mean, it's so intense, the force that's coming out, you know, just the spray is just pushing you back. And I'm swimming and I'm swimming as hard as I can to get as close as I can to this intense water, because there is nothing that clears your crystalline light body like the water of a waterfall. You know, it has the crystalline codes coming straight down off the mountain, and the mountains is where, you know, like the man-made pyramids and the ziggurats, where we experience ascension, we experience insights. It's why, you know, Moses was said to get his insights by going to the Mount of Sinai, you know. And Ubud here in Bali is a mountainous region that people come to because the name means medicine. So it's the mountains where, you know, we are often initiated with insights, with healing, with teachings. And so I had an experience during the week where, as I said, I'm always initiated through the shamanic journey, through the 7 archetypes, every time I take women on that journey. And in the Day of the Mother, after we'd finished the ceremony at the end of our program for the day, and most people went up to eat, you know, their afternoon tea and ground, I experienced very intense pain in my womb. And it was like this twisting. And I was lucky enough to be midwifed by some women, some sisters who could hold that energy, who, you know, work as shaman healers and assist people to shift energy. And I writhed for 2 hours. I saw black snakes coming out of my womb, and I was trying to birth them out of my yoni. And it was a birthing. I mean, I was sweating. I was, you know, just as the energy is moving through me. And I couldn't get all of this energy out. And fortunately, one of them did acupuncture to help relieve the intensity of the pain. So I, you know, was able to sleep. And that night I fevered all night. And the only, what was with me throughout the whole night was the Sanskrit chant of Om Namo Gurudev Namo. And this is, you know, I honor the God, the guru within. I honor the teacher within, you know, just honoring my knowing, my knowing, my knowing. So I journeyed with this energy all night. And in the morning, I came to Kundalini Yoga as we started the journey with the throat chakra. And we always open with that chant. So it just cracked me open, you know, and I cried through the chant, moving the energy. And one of my sisters who had been there, she said to me, she got the guidance that I wasn't to try and expel the energy down through my base chakra, but to transmute it up out of my crown. And this is the role of the alchemist. So this is you know, what we're all here to do at this time on the planet, we've been eclipsed by so much shadow that most people are operating out of their archetypes unconsciously, out of their shadow, because we haven't had initiation into the mythic realm, into acknowledging and understanding our archetypes consciously. So we're operating out of the small self, the lower self, and when people are in that, they're coming from wound. They're coming from the wounded ego, the unconscious ego, and they are re-wounding themselves, they're wounding each other, and this becomes endemic trauma that's handed down generation after generation, and this is what we're all in recovery from. So, and this is why so many people are being called to a path of healing for themselves and, you know, their communities and for the world. So, when I was in this waterfall, the mother says to me, sip of my crystalline waters 3 times and dunk your head 3 times and do this process 3 times. And I was reminded that in the myth of Eros and Psyche, the third task that Psyche is asked to do in the underworld is to transform, to transmute the dark, toxic waters of the river Styx, of the underworld, her lowest, densest emotions that she hasn't been able to transmute them into the crystalline waters of the Grail. And the womb is the emotional center. So here I was, you know, needing to release this emotion that I had held in my womb, which had, you know, created, you know, very painful periods. I'd had birth trauma that I hadn't fully been able to transmute, like so many women. And so then, you know, I'm on my back and I'm kicking my legs, and the spray of the waterfall is just moving the energy down through my crown and out through all of my 7 chakras, and I go into a multi-orgasmic state. Because once we open those 7 gates, the elements of creation can blow through us like a reed pipe, yeah, so that we become the shaman's flute, yeah. It sings, if you will, the song of heaven through us. And so, you know, we experience absolute communion with the divine. And so, you know, I'm, you know, gasping for breath and orgasming. I don't know how long that went on for, maybe at least half an hour. And then, you know, I get, okay, I've got to turn around and I've got to face the waterfall. And I've got my palms up like this, you know, and I'm steadying myself on the rocks in the waterfall. And then the grief comes, and I am bellowing this grief. This grief is coming up from the depths of every part of my being. And I am, you know, it's a grief that is older than time. It is the sum of all griefs, you know. And it is just, yeah, it's like this is a portal for cleansing. And the force through which the water is pouring out of the mother is the force through which the emotion is pouring forth out of me. And I sob and I sob and I sob. And then she sings a chant through me. And this is an ancient chant. And my heart is grieving as I'm singing this chant with her for all of our human family, for myself, for the grief of all of us, for the grief of the mother. But it's a relief to get it out, you know. And then my sisters swim over to me and they hold me, yeah. And I'm, you know, getting the tail end of the grief out. It was actually good to be free for the grief to move through me, how it needed to move through me. But then to be held, you know, they are naked surrounding me. We are all naked in this water, and the softness of their bodies just holding me, you know. And Shakti, it is chaos. It's the energy of chaos. And so Shakti, when Shakti is held, when we have that bowl that contains the energy, we're able to completely let go. And so this, you know, let out the tail end of the grief. And one of my dear sisters, one of the younger ones, she starts singing some song with words, and one of the words repetitively is God. And I just put my hands on her and I said, this grief is older than words. So I have all that I need here, including you. We don't We don't need the words, you know. And I think this is, you know, something to be remembered, that the ancient words didn't have consonants. You know, when we tone vowels, they open the chakras, yeah? And so often when we need to express big emotion like grief, words get in the way. We just need raw, open sounds, yeah. So once this energy had moved through me, I was totally fine. I was clean. It was grief. It was clean grief. You know, it was not, there was no story. There was no shame. There was no judgment, either within or without, from my sisters. And so then we just, you know, went up onto the bank where one of them had laid out a picnic rug, and we ate our tropical fruit, and I went and explained to my beautiful Balinese guide and my driver what I'd experienced and how it felt like a very strong portal with Lemuria, the ancient motherland. And I'd read once that Bali was like the tips of the mountains of Lemuria. Lemuria was a series of islands, which my knowing is Hawaii, Bali, New Zealand. And so interesting, we have, you know, the rising of Lemuria, and we did ritual ceremony for that last spring equinox here at my inner goddess retreat, and we did ritual again this retreat to support the ongoing rising of Lemuria with the women at my retreat, and a beautiful water healing ceremony 2 days later for all the healing of the shadow that is now taking place on the earth. So what wanted to be shared, I made some notes in my journal today, was that the final test of, you know, the shaman is to really open the crown. Because if we're stuck in third eye, we can get lost in wanting the experience, wanting the visuals of psychotropic trance, you know, and a shaman is one who enters a trance state through ritual, through ceremony, through opening a portal that takes us in that space between the worlds. And we do that by opening the directions that are the portals, the gateways through which the elements of creation move. And we all have the ability to do that, okay? We are all potential sorceresses or sorcerers. And that is not a negative thing. To be a sorcerer is to open one's rainbow bridge, one's vessel, open one's chakras, so that source energy, the divine, can move through you in the moment, and you can be a conduit. You can be the shaman's pipe, the reed pipe, the magic wand, the vessel, and in that speak words of power from the heart and direct the energy as your intuition, as your guidance is directing you to do, to anchor a conscious intention in accordance with divine will, honoring of the free will of all, but doing that with sacred intention, knowing how to raise the power safely once you've anchored your energy. If we don't understand these elements of ritual, which I've outlined in my book, Goddess Wisdom, that came out last June on the 6th of the 6th, published by Hay House, then we run the risk of psychosis. And there are a lot of people, leading ecstatic practices, including Kundalini Yoga, without sending the roots of the base of the spine down first into the earth. This is so important before we raise energy. I know people that have had, psychotic episodes after attending a kirtan, after attending, a festival and doing a ceremony, after attending an ayahuasca journey, because there is not enough understanding of the sacred feminine mysteries of the Shekinah, putting the roots of the tree down into the center of the earth and working with one chakra at a time to raise the energy, the bioelectric current through those electrical substations consciously. If we're just entering in through the third eye, we just open everything and we're not consciously able then to integrate it back down through those 7 gates. I did a toad medicine journey here, and the guys that I did that journey with went back 3 days later and did another journey, and the woman who facilitated was quite happy to take their money. And it's like, it's irresponsible medicine practice as if people are getting on a ride, you know, letting them go back and back and back and not doing the conscious work of integration between journeys. My knowing is that it takes at least 6 months to integrate a medicine journey. And that's with, you know, daily journaling, and ideally, you know, a guide that can give you a thorough grounding and understanding of the symbols that you met in your journey, the archetypes that you met in your journey, the mythic story that you journeyed between the worlds in your medicine journey. So it's not enough just to do, you know, a follow-up Skype session helping people with whatever trauma was unleashed from their past, but we need a thorough grounding in mysticism, in sacred women's wisdom. This is the piece that's missing, and why, you know, so many people are experiencing, you know, psychotic episodes after doing medicine. So in the myth of Dumuzi, what happens, and Ishtar, she comes back from her journey, descending down through the 7 gates into her, facing her own trauma, her own hell, her own unresolved experiences. And when she comes back up to the upper realm, she was said to give Dumuzi the evil eye. Now, this has been misconstrued in our modern day culture that has demonized sacred women's mysteries to, you know, be understood that she put a curse on him through giving him a dirty look. But what she has done, she has looked upon him with the eye of truth, okay? The eye of the shadow feminine, one who embodies the medicine of Kali Ma, of Lilith, of Oya, of Sekhmet, of she who has seen the shadow in herself, so she sees it clearly in others and she can call it out. And so she calls them out. She says, you know, you are not a god. Yeah, you are not a shaman. You are using the tools inappropriately, okay? You are but a drug addict, okay? And so he runs, okay, like the immature Eros, the boy, rather than turn to face his shadow like the god. He runs and he hides out at his sister's place, Gestanana. And this is true of any addict. They will, when, you know, people that love them call them out on their shadow, they will run to somebody who will validate their perspective, someone who enables them to keep going deeper into their delusional state, deeper into, you know, thinking that what they are doing is spiritual because they're doing it in a spiritual context. But it is not spiritual, it is abuse of plant medicine. So this is the false shaman, okay? Somebody who, you know, wears the feathers, you know, we call them the feather leather tribe. People, you know, my Kabbalistic teacher, she said to me, if you see somebody on the path who calls themselves a magician or a wizard or a shaman, and they're wearing the feathers and they've got the rattles and the tattoos and, you know, they look the part, keep walking. Because they're so caught up with their appearance that they look the part. They're not necessarily doing the inner work of what it means to walk the shaman's path, which is somebody who is truly humbled by their own shadow, by the shadow that they see mirrored back to them. And so, you know, he goes and hides out at his sisters. And, you know, we had women in the retreat who were in love with men that were abusing, be it plant medicines, be it, you know, marijuana, be it crystal meth that mimics plant medicines. You know, this is absolutely epidemic in our culture. And it's especially so with the menfolk, because the divas are the feminine. And so they are so craving true initiation into the feminine mysteries that they are lost in the world of the divic realm, of the shadow feminine, the unconscious feminine, that they are actually not available to women and to dancing consciously with the feminine in the everyday world. Because a shaman is somebody who can journey the 3 worlds. They go to the underworld and they look at their shadow, and then they do the conscious work in the everyday world, which is the realm of the mother, father, the king, queen, to integrate the experience. And when they do that, they ascend into the upper world, and they're able to then access their divine self, which is then the God within, or the goddess within. So, you know, those that are just doing underworld journeys, they're not able to access the three worlds, which is the realm of the sage or the crone, the mother or the father, the king, the queen, and in the underworld, the maiden or the knight. So what happens is the demons come up from the underworld, which originally was daemons, spelled D-A-E-M-O-N-S, the nature spirits. They come up and they try to drag Dumuzi back down to the underworld, because it's inevitable that he has to go there. He has to face his shadow if he is to have the shaman's death, the ego death, and become the embodiment of the sacred king, one who can embody the God, the king in the everyday world, and the shaman in the underworld. And so this is, you know, why in all the ancient myths, the king and the queen, or the lovers, the mother, the child, everyone had to journey for 6 months of the year through those dark months of the autumn and the winter down into the underworld. But then in the spring, they would re-emerge. And we've just had here in the Northern Hemisphere the spring equinox, which is the white wedding. And the insight given to me last night was that the white wedding is the time of sacred union within. Okay, when one who has done the inner work to consciously see and integrate those archetypes that govern the chakras, the inner face of the god and the goddess that govern those inner chakras, which is what I initiate people through in my Rainbow Bridge retreat, which is actually coming up very soon, first week of December. I'll speak more about that at the end. But that the white wedding, one who has attained that state of inner sacred union, the god and goddess within, is then ready to enact the sacred marriage, the hieros gamos, to embody the holy couple at the next seasonal chakra point of Beltane, to consummate the marriage of the god and the goddess as conduits for healing, to restore the balance of heaven on earth, you know, spirit and matter, feminine, masculine, in a sacred context. And this was the ancient religion, using love and sexuality through our bodies as portals, as vessels, to restore and maintain the balance. And this is what the star beings descended to earth and taught all the indigenous people, and what has been lost and forgotten, and what now needs to re-emerge if we are to transition as a collective with Gaia into this new era, the return to Eden. And so, you know, I was fortunate enough that at the exact time of full moon, you know, within 2 days of the spring equinox, we were in this, you know, journey coming through the 7 feminine archetypes, stepping up out of the underworld in the Inner Goddess retreat, doing Kundalini yoga. And I had a euphoric experience where I had a bee come and land on me twice, and I kind of went, oh, queen bee, that's a nice sign, on the day of the crown chakra of Ishtar. And through singing a chant, went into trance state. So this is the thing, once we've had medicine once, we don't need it again. We then use breath work, we use chant, we use dance to consciously enter into trance state, so that then we have more chance of consciously integrating what we experience as the shaman between the worlds. So I then become this huge magenta flower, okay, an embodiment of the crown chakra. And the message is given to me, of course the bees are attracted to you. You know, bees flock to the flower. And this is what flower power is about in the Aquarian age. The women are to embody flowers. This is why women love being given flowers. It's a mirror of what we are here to embody. Someone who is completely open in her divine radiance as a goddess, which then inspires men to come to woman as the temple, she who embodies oneness with Gaia, oneness with the goddess, so that he is inspired to then as looking to her as the muse, become his divine self and to meet her in sacred union. So this is why in the tarot card, the Lovers, we see him looking to the woman and the woman looking to the divine. That she, her first commitment is to spirit. This is why I just, the last day or second last day of the Inner Goddess retreat, the women take vows to wed themselves to spirit on the understanding that unless this is our number one relationship, all of our relationships will spiral down into entropy, into the lower selves re-wounding each other, into a living hell, a power struggle. And that, this is what we see in the card of the devil in the tarot. We see the same two lovers, but they're manacled, they're shackled to one another, operating out of their lower selves, looking at each other, trying to get their needs met from each other. So, funny, Cynthia said, I'm afraid she'll start making sense if I keep listening. That's funny. So, this is our role as women. To all the sisters that are listening and watching this, we are here to embody the goddess and trust that if we do, surrender completely, that if we are not afraid to keep growing into our fullest light, to embody that, we will be met. But if we step down, if we compromise who we are, like the stepsisters in Cinderella, chopping off our toes to try and fit into the shoes so that we can be with a man, we will compromise our divinity. We will not have a sacred union. We will feel, unmet within our soul, within relationships. That if we want to have a truly soul-fulfilling relationship, a soul-mate union, we need to honor every aspect of our soul by knowing what our needs are, by speaking what our needs are, and not accepting, I'm doing the no deal sign, not accepting any man who cannot meet those 7 gates. Or if you're a lesbian, not accepting a woman who's operating more from her masculine, if she can't honor you at the 7 gates. So I want to make that point. It's not about the holy couple must embody a male and a female body. We're all masculine, feminine energies. So this is about soulful reunions, with the beloved, regardless of whether your physical body or your physical preference is for man or woman. That is actually, quite irrelevant. So what else do I want to say about this? The way that we are going to heal this planet back to green, back to the garden state that she once was before we descended, before we spiraled down into entropy, before we created this living hell from a place of unconscious shadow wound. It is through becoming the embodiment of the divine in human form. But we don't just, step into love and light. You can't just say, oh, love and light, love and light. You've got to go down into the basement. You've got to open Pandora's box. You've got to do the inner work consciously and own your shadow in order to then ascend and become the resurrected God or the resurrected goddess. So for those that are interested in doing that, I offer pathways, I offer teachings, I offer resources. I have books, Creating Sacred Union Within, which is to embody the God and the goddess within. Oh, I forgot I was telling you about my journey with that. So I became this big flower. And then the words given to me were Sat Nam, the truth of my name. This is so important. We are here to embody the truth of our name. And our name, I always ask when I meet someone, what does your name mean? Because our soul chooses our name based on its meaning, on what it is that is what we're here to embody. Now, when I arrived, my birth name was Tanya. And this is a derivative, a diminutive of Titania, Queen of the Fairies. So to teach people about, what it is to come home to our magical selves through the nature realm. And for years I did fairy parties initiating children before I started initiating women. And now I'm about to be initiating men in 2019. This has been my, series of apprenticeship. But then when I outgrew that name, when I was initiated into Women's Mysteries, I received the name Tanishka. And I recognized it as soon as I heard my name. It was a bigger energy for me to hold. It would have been too much power for me as a little girl to have the name Tanishka. I was given this name in a pizza shop by Polish guys that were like, oh, Tanishka, it's the pet name for Tanya in Russian. And as soon as I heard it, I recognized myself. And I also received the guidance that if I used this name, which I had been known by back in ancient India as a tantrika, long before the Vedas were written down, when the teachings would come through the tantrikas as shamans, sexual shamans who would go into ecstatic states and bring through the teachings. And this is how I work. You know, I don't have a tantric lineage, you know, I just get it direct from source. So my books are channeled, my teachings are channeled, although the door was open to me, as it must be by a teacher, and mine was Jennifer Powell, and I'm forever grateful. So hi Jen, she's here watching this right now. So so in this time of exact full moon in Aries opposite Sun and Libra, I go into this rapturous state, into this multi-orgasmic state where my hair becomes one with the luminous tree of life, and the tops of, you know, the strands of my hair, I'm seeing a spider now, how interesting, become the stars. And I'm being told that I am the star tree, you know, the Ishtar, Tanishka is the tree of life, the star tree, and it's, you know, looking like the tree in Avatar, and reminds me of when they lock the tail of the dragon, you know, or the strand of their hair into the tail of the dragon, and they become one with the tree, and I'm activated with this tree of life. And then I become the deer entwined with the stag king, the deer, and, you know, the antlers are intertwined with the branches of the tree of life. And for me, this was an inner initiation to say you have attained sacred union within, you know, and that now I am ready for the rite of Hieros Gamos. So, you know, the teaching started coming through me in 2008, and that's when I was guided to write this trilogy of sacred union books and to start doing sacred union practices. And so through doing couple sessions, through doing taking groups around the Wheel of Eight, which is the journey of the Hieros Gamos, I was experientially given more understanding into these teachings, and that's continued ever since. So it's now been 10 years. So the initiations that I'm doing are here on the land in Bali, because this is where the twin serpents for Gaia, they cross, they intercept in Peru, and they intercept here in Ubud in Bali. And so when we are on this land, we have more access to awakening the meridians that are those twin serpents that carry the consciousness of the sacred feminine, the sacred masculine, the god, goddess, from the center of the earth all the way up through our nadis, through our light body, to create the caduceus, the symbol of the twin serpents coiled around Sushumna, that central pillar with the wings outstretched. This is the symbol of wholeness, of healing, that has been appropriated by pharmaceutical companies, by the medical fraternity, but it was once understood, you know, through the 300 healing temples of Asclepius, the father of modern medicine. The way to heal was to be initiated into women's mysteries, and to, through mysticism, through entering the mythic realm consciously, to awaken these meridians and to meet all that was out of alignment with our souls, so that we could integrate these aspects. So if this is something that calls to your soul, if you feel you are ready to take that shaman's journey, it would be my absolute privilege and honor to be your guide. I will upload images, before and after images of the women who've just finished doing the descent journey to awaken the feminine meridian, to show you how powerful it is to see the difference between someone who's in ego and someone who's in soul by the end of the week. by being put through this powerful process of Kundalini awakening and through conscious integration of the soul archetypes. So it is deliberately run, this retreat, when the sun is moving through the constellation of Ophiuchus, which is the sign of the awakened man, he who is holding the twin serpents up above his head, and it's said to be Asclepius in the sky. So we have above and below us, both in the land herself and in the celestial transit, the support to awaken these twin serpents, not just within our own vessel, but within the world soul. Because everything that we do here, particularly while on this vortice that is Bali, we do within the world soul, which is the psyche of the collective. You know, people have commented to me, wow, Bali really suits you, you're glowing, you know. It's because I'm in this vortex, you know, I've literally got the God, Goddess energies flowing up through me. And so this is a very potent land and a very potent time to take this journey. So we start the journey December 9 and we finish December 17, which is the last day of the sun moving through Ophiuchus. So if you'd like to find out more about this journey, it is for men and women. It is for everybody, regardless of whether you're a single or a couple or LGBT or heterosexual. You know, it doesn't matter what your relationship status or your gender identity or your preferences, does not matter, because it's all about the journey we take to embody all the 7 facets, the 7 faces of the inner God and the inner goddess within, to awaken ourselves as divine beings having a human experience, so we may truly be a clear vessel to serve at our fullest potential and act as a midwife here on the planet during this time of transition. And we really need everybody to be stepping up now at this time, not to be lost in the shaman's pipe, chasing experiences, you know, through substances, but not doing the inner work to consciously integrate the experience. So if you'd like more info, go to my website, moonwoman.com, search events, the Rainbow Bridge retreat, and I'll put the link into the post to go with this video. So I hope this has been of service to you, this information today. It would be my honor to, you know, be a vessel for more teachings, should you feel that now is the time. And feel free to share this video with anyone that intuitively resonates with you as someone that's, aligned to hear it. Awesome. Have a beautiful day. To those of you that join me live, thank you so much. It's so much nicer to know that I'm speaking to, you know, a community out there and not just a video camera. I can't think of anything else that wants to be added. So love you all. Thank you. We're in this together. We heal together. The more we share our journey transparently, the more we inspire one another to go there and to do the work. Blessings.